this may be quite a controversial opinion, but I think that Corpse Bride is a better film than Nightmare Before Christmas. Not the soundtrack. I think the Nightmare Before Christmas soundtrack is perfection, but the actual film, the narrative, the animation, I prefer Corpse Bride. Obviously, I love anything that Tim Burton does or Tim Burton has created, but ultimately, Corpse Bride is my favourite of the two films. I decided to check out the album, the soundtrack, from start to finish without actually watching the visuals, and I don't know if I've ever done that. I owned the album, I've listened to it a lot, but I don't think I've ever listened to the entire thing all the way through in one sitting, and that's exactly what I did. I made some notes, I thought I'd share my thoughts. Ultimately, Danny Elfman is king, and, I'm not going to not like this. I absolutely love the soundtrack. As I said, it isn't as good as the Nightmare Before Christmas one, but I do think that it's pretty fitting and works exceptionally well with the animation. So, as I've said before in my soundtrack reviews, and you may already be aware of this, I don't have the vocabulary to pick apart the songs and analyse them from a technical perspective. I am pretty tone deaf. I don't always recognise the more obscure instruments. I can tell a violin from a drum, but, I'm not well versed with orchestration and composition. So this is basically just me as a Tim Burton addict and massive Corpse Bride fan, sharing some views. I invite you to do the same. So as always with these kind of reviews, I'm just going to go down the songs, share any thoughts. There are a couple of songs where I kind of don't have that many thoughts or feelings about them, but for the most part, I have some adjectives, I think is the best way to describe it. So we start off with the main title, gorgeous, quintessential Elfman, sets us up for what we can expect. According to plan, has a lot of fun to this one. We have a great mix of characters with vocals from the likes of Albert Finney and Joanna Lumley. I really love it. It kind of works better with the animation because it's such an interesting, entertaining, and one of the more colourful scenes in the film. But on its own as well, I really enjoyed it. Victor's piano solo, I should point out as well, I'm not sure if this will spoil anything if you haven't seen the film, so I'd say proceed with caution if you haven't seen it. But also, if you haven't seen it, I'd say definitely go and see it. Victor's piano solo, really delicate, and I love the bit at the end where he fluffs it. It's just not expected because the entire track is beautiful, delicate, very well played, and then he fluffs it right at the end. And it makes me laugh every time. I really enjoy it. Into the Forest is hauntingly beautiful. I feel like Remains of the Day, which is track 5, is one of the most iconic from this album. I love the sound of the bones. It's just, I think even if you didn't know what the film was about, you could probably identify that they were the sound of bones. And I just think it's beautifully done and very well done. I love the storytelling aspect of this particular track. Casting a Spell, eerie, delicate, quite ominous. And then that progresses into Moondance, which I think is quite similar in tone, not as ominous, but still quite eerie. Then we have Victor's Deception, which is haunting. It's beautiful. Really thoroughly like this one. Track 9 is Tears to Shed, sung by one of my favourite people in the world, Helena Bonham Carter, and obviously I absolutely adore this. I love this so much. Her vocals are beautiful. I can't fault it. I wouldn't even try to fault it. I have her name tattooed to my wrist. I'm completely biased, but it's a beautiful, beautiful song. Victoria's Escape, track 10, sounds like tiptoeing. It gave me the impression of somebody tiptoeing and being sneaky and, I guess, escaping. Now, if somebody said to me, create a song, I would say no. If somebody said to me, create a song that makes you think of tiptoeing, I wouldn't, I couldn't do that. Obviously not. But Elfman just seems to be able to do anything and put any image in the mind. And it's just absolutely perfect. After that, we have the Piano Duet, which is pretty good, but it's quite slow to get my attention. Towards the end of it is when it really picks up. Maybe the final third of the song I really absolutely love. But before that, it's kind of mediocre. New Arrival, this is a sudden change in tone. It's much more upbeat, and from the previous few songs, it's not as emotional, not as, I was going to say negative, but that's not the word I'm looking for, not as delicate or as fragile. It's a lot more funky. Victoria's Wedding, I thought was kind of not really, I don't have many thoughts on that. The wedding song, though, I love. I love the vocals. Great tune. Really fantastic. Then that dips into the Party Arrives, which is so funky, so jazzy. Really nothing like the majority of the album, and it works quite well. We have another shift in tone here, and when you watch the film, it's perfectly placed. I do absolutely love it. Coincidentally, like Victoria's Wedding, I'm kind of meh about Victor's Wedding. I just didn't really find it that exciting or interesting. It's good, obviously it's good. It's Danny Elfman. But there was nothing about it that made me sit up and go, wow. The only thought I have for Barkis' Bummer is that it's quite loud compared to the rest of them. And I don't know what that is, but I don't know if it was just a dodgy track that I had, but it just seems louder in volume than the rest of the CD. I don't know if it was meant to be. I can't remember if it is louder in the film. I'd assume not. But beyond that, I have no major thoughts. And then we end with the finale and the 2 end credits. They're beautiful, they're emotional. Mainly, I'm just sad that the film's over by that point, and I think it sums up everything well and concludes the full film really nicely. This is, as I said, one of my favourite Burton films. Not one of my favourite Elfman soundtracks, but that's not really saying much, because he has done some ridiculously amazing soundtracks. And without question, Nightmare Before Christmas is definitely the best of them. But Corpse Bride, beautiful film, equally lovely soundtrack. It's a joy to listen to. I prefer to watch it, but it's still an absolute delight to listen to. And if you've seen the film, I'd say definitely listen to the soundtrack on its own. It's a fun way to revisit the narrative and experience it more internally. I do, obviously, absolutely love it.